What started as the perfect proposal in Paris ended up in a breakup 3 days later over a hooker in Amsterdam. But wait, this is a love story. Filthy.
Fucking.
And faithful. Hi, I'm Faith.
I'm Brian, and welcome to our podcast,
Filthy, Fucking,
and Faithful. We are a couple that have been together for 2 years. We are engaged, and we have been through many ups and many downs, but we are madly in love and committed to each other. And we hope that by doing this podcast, you might be able to learn from some of our life lessons.
Oh, and boy, do we have a lot of life lessons for you. You're going to be on this roller coaster with us, journeying with us through the good, the bad, the ugly, and the fucking fun. And we got some life lessons along the way. So we're going to start with a pretty hefty one, though.
Yes, we're going to start out with the fact that there's a lot of backstory there, but we'll just jump right to the meat of the matter. We lived together. We bought a condo together before we got engaged or got married, but then we flew to Europe to get engaged. We first landed in London, then we went to Paris, where it was a pretty amazing proposal. Was it not, honey?
It definitely was the best proposal. Like, every girl would dream of a proposal like this. You're in Paris, you're in the Eiffel Tower, outside the Eiffel Tower. He had a photographer booked. It was literally perfect.
And we went out on a cruise afterwards along the Seine. At one point, I took you up onto the dance floor. We started dancing. The entire boat started cheering for us. It was like a fairy tale.
It really was like a fairy tale, but you're probably wondering, okay, so what went wrong? Where did you guys go from there?
We started 2 days in London. That was just kind of like getting our legs about us. A little bit of drama with the dog walker, but we managed to work through that. Paris was 3 days of pure paradise, and then we decided to go for 2 days in Amsterdam. Now, a little bit of backstory. You and I, although we have been completely monogamous with one another for 2 years that we have been together, we are pretty sexually adventurous with the two of us within our relationship. You know, you do things that a lot of women don't do. And so we both kind of thought about the idea of maybe incorporating a third party in Amsterdam. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I'm a pole dancer. I do that on the side for fun. We definitely explore our sexual side with each other. Mm-hmm. We have never stepped out of this relationship, and we both know we've never done that. But we will go through some backstories of times where the lines got blurred. Yeah. But to go back to Amsterdam, I wouldn't say I'm bisexual, but I definitely am bi-curious. And we had always kind of fantasized about the idea of a woman. And we would get kind of worked up talking about Amsterdam and getting a woman. So the idea was always in the back of our mind. And we played around with it idea-wise for what, I would say a couple months?
Oh, no. It was actually early on in the relationship. I think you even brought up the idea of us like buying a prostitute when we first lived together, when we were renting. We never went through with it. But there was even a time where you and I went on tryst one time. I don't know if you recall. We were drinking pretty heavily. There was even a time where we both went on Tryst, which is a site that you can shop for female escorts. We looked at a few. You're like, oh, what do you think of this one? We never went through with it. But it was something that we had talked about for about a year. And unfortunately, this is very hard for me because I broke the rules. This is a podcast that is going to be very therapeutic for me because I'm carrying a lot of shame over what happened. The whole idea of this was to have another woman pleasure you, and that the two of us were both going to pleasure you together. The first night we went out, let's talk about that.
We got to start with the good stuff. The first
2
night in Amsterdam is just so spectacular. One, Amsterdam is just this glorious, beautiful freaking place. And we were jet lagged. We had been jumping city to city, and we knew we were going to get wild in Amsterdam. So we had said, we're going to take it easy tonight. We got in at like 5, and we're like, let's go get dinner. And that quickly turned into an adventure.
We went to dinner in like one of the squares there, and then we just started, you're like, hey, let's just go walk over to the red light district. And we actually walked into 2 separate hookers, prostitutes, little windows. The first one we went into, we quickly realized was a drag queen.
Transgender.
Transgender. I apologize. Or just somebody who had had a sex change. I remember asking her, were you a man? And she said no. But there was something not right about her, right?
Yeah. I think we should really paint the picture here for people that haven't been to Amsterdam. When you walk down that red light district, it's not like hundreds of girls are in windows the
Right.
way it used to be, I guess.
Like 20, 30 years ago, I went there when I was in my 20s. It was like windows, just windows and windows of women. That is now tempered. It's not nearly as many as there were. We walked around. We really didn't see anybody that we liked. We went into that one. We both got nervous. We pulled out. Then we went into another woman. And and then you were like, oh, she's cute, but she was really kind of bitchy and just like really kind of like not super nice. So we just didn't get a good vibe. So we left. So then we decided we would go to a live sex show. And that was a success for a number of reasons. We first go into this guy and he's like, well, I don't know if we were both kind of hesitant. And he's like, look, come on, I'm going to take you over to this place, the Moulin Rouge. You're going to be, and he walks us in like we're VIPs. Of course, we still had to pay. But we ended up getting in the third row. We saw like 6 different acts of different sexual, women playing with themselves, women having lesbian sex, one couple having sex. But the grand finale, the coup de grace, was when this one woman was up there and asked for a volunteer. And Faith raises her hand and says, I'll go up on stage. And I look and I'm like, that's my woman. And then what happened?
Well, for people who have never been to a live sex show, which we've obviously never been to before, it's really kind of odd. So you go into this theater that's pretty small. It's got a small stage. There's people going in and out because they know no one's going to stay the whole time. I don't even know if there is a whole time. I think it's just a continuous show. So we're just watching odd act after odd act. Like one girl put a candle in her vagina. We watched a couple having sex, and it wasn't like they were like stellar looking people. Like none of them like blew our mind.
Right.
And I always thought it was interesting that there was like no fake tits either in any of the women.
Right. We
but
saw
that's
very
a side
little
note.
fake tits in all of Europe, in fact.
Yeah,
Really.
that's true. And I guess for disclosure, I have a nice pair of fake tits.
Yes,
so,
they're gorgeous.
which is going to be relevant in the story.
Yeah, because the men, oh my gosh, in Paris, they were looking at you. One guy said, "You're a very lucky man," as I was walking down the street with my gorgeous Faith on my arm. So Faith gets up there and sits in this chair, and this woman proceeds to dance around and seduce her. I mean, they're expecting a man to go up there. She goes up there, and it's the sexiest fucking thing I've ever seen. I mean, this woman is trying to seduce her. And then at one point, she walks off the stage and leaves you in the chair, and you have this look of terror on your face.
Oh, I was terrified. One, I didn't even know. We must have been high.
We were high. Yes.
Okay, because I don't know why I raised my hand.
We hit the Bulldog beforehand. Not the Bulldog, but we hit one of the other coffee shops before. And the Amsterdam we'd buy California cannabis. This was some serious shit.
I don't know what they put in it, but
yeah,
we were not prepared for how we were going to feel that high. So I volunteer. I get up there. I can't see anything. Like you barely see the audience because the lights are so bright. I could see you, and I kept looking at you. But when she left, oh my gosh, I'm like, am I going to have sex with this girl on stage in front of my fiance? I was so terrified.
And you sort of did. So she comes back with a vibrating vibrator that is controlled by an iPad, hands you the iPad, and puts the vibrator inside her pussy, and you have to control the vibrator. And at one point, she's laying down in front of you while you're pushing the iPad, and you are moving your body to it. And then she probably didn't actually have an orgasm, but she faked an orgasm. And the entire audience went fucking crazy, including me. And I thought it was like the hottest thing ever. Then you came down, and it was funny. You go, we're going to take it easy tonight. We're definitely not going to have sex. But the second you got back in the seat next to me, I said, baby, we are definitely fucking tonight. And we did. And it was super hot.
Oh, man. Yeah. No, that wasn't when we did the full anal thing.
No,
right?
The next day.
Okay.
And that's another thing. Faith is, and this is something that, we'll get into it. Faith does anal. Not all the time, but when she does, it's like amazing. I've never been with a woman who ever did anal before other than you. The next day we woke up and we were just feeling raunchy, and you let me fuck you in the ass 4 times.
Yeah.
4 times.
It got gross. People were like, oh my gosh, how do you do that? Anal, like usually it's a very clean process. Like we've done it and with sex, 1 time at night, not 2 times penetration. This time we did 4 times penetration of anal.
Yeah, I came in your ass, like I fucked you in the ass in the middle of the day. We videotaped it. And then like I laid you down on your stomach, and then you grinded against me, and then you came, and then I pulled out, and then we laid there and we kept like making out and getting horny. Then I got hard again, And then I fucked you again in the ass. That time I did not come, but you did come. I think you came every single time we did that. And then the fourth time I came a second time.
Well, I was more thinking about, like eventually poo is going to happen. And once that kind of happened, I was like, oh my God, we're not doing this anymore. I'm done. The 4 times are done.
That's it. I got to draw the line.
So we already had that, the perfect morning. And then we set it up as a beautiful night for a dinner. And we're like, you know what? We already did the live sex show. Let's not do anything else. Let's not push the limits too far because we're going to have just a wonderful night.
Yes.
So we get really high.
Well, we first go to dinner, and it was a wonderful dinner. It was the best. The Middle Eastern food in both London and in Amsterdam was the best Middle Eastern food I've ever had. We went to a Turkish place. I made friends with the maitre d'. And I tell him we had proposed. He brings us a bottle of champagne. Now, we need to qualify. You and I are not drinkers. We used to be, but really not anymore. We're a 1 or 2 drink people only. He brought a full fucking bottle of champagne, Prosecco. And we both had like 2 glasses of champagne. I had 3. You had 2. Then the meal was over. He brings over a shot of ouzo, which is, if you guys don't know, like a Greek liqueur. You took 1 sip. You're like, fuck no. I drank half of mine. Then we went to the Bulldog, to the coffee shop. We got a table, which is very hard to do. And we rolled a joint and smoked, or we bought a pre-roll and we smoked half of that. Now we're fucking blitzed in Amsterdam at that point, walking out of the Bulldog, which is in the heart of the red light district, right by all the prostitutes.
I think it's important to note, too, with just our vibe, we were feeling each other so much. We were so in love. We were so happy. We even had a point where Brian will do this thing. He'll grab me and start dancing with me in the middle of the street. And he did that in Amsterdam after dinner, and people watched from the traffic. So we're just in love. We're on cloud 9. Yeah. We're like, ain't nothing bad gonna happen tonight.
Right. It was a dream state. I danced with you on those. If you ever been to Amsterdam, they have these bridges over the canals, and I pulled you on top of one of the bridges over the canal. And we just danced with no music. And the cars, you're right, they walked by, they looked at us, and we just kept walking. And it was a fairy tale on the heels of the thing about anal sex is, like you said, we'll do a separate podcast. Yes, it's very raunchy, but it's also very intimate. It requires a great deal of trust on your part. In fact, you even said, I asked you, why do you do this, baby? And you're like, I just feel really close to you. I just want to feel really close to you. So we were closer in that moment than we were ever before. And then we went into the dark side. We started walking along and we saw women in the windows. And I remember we saw a woman in a window and you said, baby, she's cute. What do you think of her? And I was like, yeah, honey, if you think so. And we walked over to the window and we opened the door and we said the ground rules were going to be this. I was not going to touch her. This was this is what we had decided. I was not going to touch this woman, but you did agree. She was going to touch you. But then you agreed to, I was going to get a double BJ from you and the prostitute.
But I said, absolutely. I think the one main thing, if you stop listening at this point, if you're going into a situation like that, you have to have hard, fast rules that you have to be strict and really abide by them, because it can get really sticky if you go in there the way we did, drunk, high. The rules started blurring. We'll go into that. But our main rule was, since I had just gotten fake tits, I had just gotten these perfect boobs, and it was a weekend. And I told them, hey, I'm not going to feel comfortable if you touch another girl's boobs. Definitely don't do that. But everything else, like the double BJ, we had already agreed on that. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Because he has to wear a condom anyways for the double BJ. Like, It's not like the idea of it's hot. But let's kind of go through. We picked this girl. I think she was pretty hot. They were up there, like, Amsterdam. You have girls in the window that are not very attractive at all, that are on their phones playing around. And then you have ones that are obviously transgender. And then you have ones that look like supermodel playmate that you can't even believe this is her job.
Right. And so we negotiated with her. I told her, I'm not going to touch you. You're going to touch her, but we do want to do a double BJ. She quoted us, I think it was like 300 euros. So I then turned to you and you said, baby, you want to do it? And I turned to you and I said, baby, if you want to do this, you have to be the first one to walk across the threshold. And you did. We get brought in and we go up these stairs into this room that felt like a prison cell. Like it was like dark and it was dank.
And there's dildos everywhere. And the
Yeah.
bed is like a prison mat. It
Yeah.
really is. It's not a sexy, fluffy pillow
No.
situation.
And so we're wasted, we're high, and I said, all right, you two start touching each other. You guys didn't kiss, but you guys did take each other's tops off. She started touching your breasts. You were touching hers. And then this is where it went bad. You said, you want us to put our breasts in your face, baby? And I said, sure. And they both put their breasts in my face. And that's when I lost consciousness. And that's when I made the mistake. My beautiful fiance with her brand new fake tits are in front of mine. Another pair of tits that I had never seen before, not nearly as beautiful. And I ended up putting both your tits in my mouth and the prostitute's tits in my mouth. And that was where it went south. At that point, to your credit, you didn't say anything. You did say, do you mind if I join you? But I was already lost. I was already gone. And the evening had ended. At that point, it was over. But you kept going. You kept pushing through. You went and did the double BJ with me. But at that point, you must have been harboring a great deal of resentment and anger once I did that.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, once I saw, it is a hard thing when you see your fiance. And my boobs are actually bigger too.
Much bigger and better, no question.
And he was drunk and high, and it's a tough thing to watch you suck another girl's tits. Like, I didn't even know we could suck tits. I had no idea we could suck anything. So I was blown away by that act alone. And then I was kind of left out. But I'm like, well, I'm here. We've already paid for this. So yeah. I'm going to soldier through it.
I probably did break the rules. Nobody stopped me. But that's no excuse. That's my biggest regret. My other big regret is going into a delicate situation where there's a tendency to hurt the other person and be jealous. Going in without a clear head was a huge mistake. Going in wasted. Do not go into that wasted unless you are pros and you have unless you're a couple that doesn't have those boundaries. We do have those boundaries. It may not sound like we do, but we do. And those boundaries went out the window because of my level of intoxication. And that's my first recommendation. If you're going to try this, establish the ground rules right out of the gate and stick to them. And I did not.
But the lucky thing is, he didn't have sex with her.
Right.
That didn't happen. So he had sex with me and she was just around. So let's just describe her. I remember her having fake tits. I don't remember her ass. I don't think I even looked at her ass. I just remember wearing lingerie.
Yeah, I don't remember.
She had short brown hair. She was like, oh, yeah.
She had some Eastern European accent.
She was cute. She was hot for what I remember.
Woman, but yeah. But she was an actress. That's her job.
Yeah.
But yeah, she wasn't, in retrospect, if I had just let her touch you, and then I put you on your back, started fucking you, and I wanted her to touch you and touch your breasts, and she did, but she really, at that point, you were not into it anymore because you were already hurt by what I had done, and you were simply going through the motions for me at that point. She was touching you, but she was just going through the motions, and at that point, it was not really it wasn't hot anymore. Because I had already triggered you. The double BJ, I felt very awkward during that.
Yeah, what's that like?
Well, it was, first of all, again, I would have enjoyed it a lot more if I wasn't so fucked up. I'm not saying this just because you're my fiance, but your blowjob skills were infinitely better than hers. But the idea of you and another woman pleasuring me was hot. And I feel terrible that I denied you that same experience. Because the idea of me and a woman pleasuring you would have been very hot for you. I'm still amazed that you were able to handle that. I mean, the woman put my dick in her mouth and you were touching my balls.
I put my mouth on there too.
No,
it was just kind of like there wasn't a lot of room unless you had a condom.
No.
It's like, where do you go?
Sucked my dick really, really good. But at one point, you took my dick and pushed it to her. You held my dick while she sucked on it.
I do remember that. Yeah,
And I don't know how that made you feel. I was looking at you the whole time it was happening, waiting for you to flip out, and you did it.
What's weird is because we already established the double blowjob was we agreed on that. So I couldn't get mad over something that I had already signed the paperwork for, essentially.
Yeah.
But the only thing, but in the back of my mind, it was still like, oh, wow, like this is all about Brian's pleasure, not so much about mine at this point.
Right.
So I was just ready to wrap it up. And I even told him, hey, I think you need to come. Because I don't know if there's a time limit. I think there's a 20-minute time limit.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure because she had a timer on. You probably didn't notice.
I did not.
Yeah. And you were like, oh, let's do one more position. I'm like, no, absolutely not. You got to wrap this up. And she's like, oh, girl wants you to hurry.
Yeah.
Like she was done too.
You guys were both done. And at that point, it was just like, what a waste of money. I wish I had saved that $300 for something else.
So we leave. And when you leave these things, there are just hundreds of people walking by out front. Like,
right out front.
Everybody's curious. Everybody's looking. And for some reason, I will kind of...
Yeah, I deserve it.
Brian,
I deserve
we
it.
get out. He stops right in front of the red window, right where this girl is going to go back to work. And he goes, all right, tell me, how did you feel about that? And I'm like, are you? And people are watching us because they knew what we just did. I'm like, oh my God.
Right. You're like, Brian, not here, not here, not here. So we walked away and you're just quiet. You're just silent.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how was that? No, it's fine, baby. It was an experience. It was an experience. And then you mentioned it. You're like, but I didn't know you could suck her tit. And I went, oh, fuck, I broke the rules. And it was like I came back to earth. And then it was just... like, I just felt the darkness falling over us. I felt this dark cloud over us. It was silent. It was awkward. We couldn't get an Uber. I tried ordering an Uber. You were just sitting there on the street. And I just remember feeling this great deal of regret and shame. We ordered an Uber. The Uber came to pick us up. Somebody else got in our Uber. My thing said, all right, it's taking you to your... And it was like, it was just suddenly like our karma with the universe was just off. Mm-hmm. And I had to just hail like a regular cab, paid him a shit ton of money. And when we came back to the hotel, I knew, I was like, this might end our relationship. And you went to bed quiet, but I could tell you were seething. But you you were just laying there. And then I don't recall you slept at all that night, did you?
I don't really actually remember because I remember us just being really screwed up and I was just not wanting to discuss it. I knew that wasn't going to be a good night. But we were leaving the next day.
Next day, we were flying back to our hometown.
And I woke up early and I started walking around Amsterdam at probably like 4 a.m. or something.
Right.
Like,
I woke up, you were already gone.
And I was looking at my engagement ring going, oh my God, am I making the right decision? Which everyone kind of feels when you put that in. Yeah.
We had just gotten engaged 3 days earlier and I broke the rules and I hurt you. I cheated on you in front of you. And you threw the ring at me in the hotel room. You said, keep your fucking ring, you can sell it. And I didn't blame you. But we had to suck it up and go home. We got to the airport. It was a mess. We hadn't slept. You asked for separate seats.
Yeah.
So we said,
I was so mad at you.
We had a leg. We had to first go to Boston, and then we had to change planes in Boston, then fly from Boston to San Diego. For the trip to Boston, we were in separate seats. And I just sat back there, and I was so despondent, and you were so pissed. And I knew you were pissed. And then when we got to Boston, we changed planes. We did end up sitting together in San Diego, or on the way to San Diego. And we didn't say a word. We just sat there. In fact, we were in there in silence, and they thought I was a sex trafficker. Tell that story.
I forgot about that. So we're sitting next to each other. We're not talking, but I mean, I guess they figured there was some kind of connection or we knew each other in some way. But you also looked super suspicious. You had your sunglasses on. You had your jacket on.
Yeah.
You were sitting there quiet. And I went back to use the restroom, and the flight attendants, this male and this female, which you knew the names of, like you had talked to them.
Yeah.
Because that's what you do. And they're like, hey, are you okay? Are you safe? I'm like, yeah. And then I'm like, what are you talking about? The guy you're with, we're just not sure what the relationship is. Do you need help? I'm like, oh my gosh, no, that's my fiance. We're just fighting right now. And they're like, oh, thank God. They thought you were a sex trafficker. And I'm like, oh, wow, I wonder what made them. When it was weirder because we had this guy sitting next to me. I was in the middle.
Right.
And I was talking to this guy, and he was the creepiest guy on the planet. And they didn't suspect that guy.
Right.
At all.
And I enjoyed listening to you talk to this guy. You were trying to be nice, and I could tell you were just in absolute agony over this guy who would not stop talking to you. Because Faith is very hot. Let's just be I want to paint a picture. Faith looks like a fucking supermodel. And with these big giant tits, she's in her early 30s. She's a pole dancer. Her body is rocking. But she's also very intelligent and very friendly. And you have a magnetic personality. You're the whole package. So if you start talking to somebody, it's like for a guy, it's like the floodgates. This guy, how long? He probably talked to you for like 2 of the 4 hours.
Oh yeah, flight. I had to fake being asleep. I got to that point. But to paint your picture, you guys don't know what we look like, but Brian looks like a Hollywood actor. He has a stunning face that looks like Brad Pitt. He's just, everywhere he goes, he has this power of talking to people. He can get anybody to be friends with him. It's an incredible skill you have. And it's one of the things I find most attractive about you. So we end up flying into San Diego, and we're exhausted at this point. Yeah. It's been 14 hours?
Oh, no, longer than that. It was an 8-hour flight to Boston. Then we had a 2-hour layover, and then it was a 6-hour flight. So yeah, we had basically been flying for 18 hours. We had been up for over 24 hours when we landed in San Diego. And we had to get our luggage. And then we just have this massive fight. As we're waiting for an Uber, we just explode. And
there's people around us. There are like so many people. We don't even care. It's like we didn't even, and we just start talking about the whole Amsterdam. Yeah, I'm like, oh, you had to suck our titties.
And I was like, I was set up for failure. I was set up. You brought me into that hooker's den just so you could make me fail, so you could break up with me. And
I'm like, oh yeah, I forced you to suck this girl's tit. That's what I did.
You put her tits in my face. And I'm like screaming this at the San Diego airport.
People are watching us. One guy who was filming us, and we didn't even care at that point. We were so mad. But we both got in the same Uber.
And we got in the same Uber.
And then we continued the fight in the Uber.
Yeah, we kept going. And then you finally apologized to the guy. You're like, I'm really sorry. He's like, it was okay. It was okay. Good. And that's not, and he did have an accent. And yeah, and then we got here and you were like, it's over. It's done. The only thing I think that might have saved us is I owned up to it. I knew what I had done was wrong. And I knew I had hurt her. I knew I was at fault. I was, at first, yes, in my anger, I blamed you for setting me up to fail. But at the end of the day, I chose to drink the ouzo, the 3 glasses of, I made bad decisions. Yes, we made them together, but I was the one that did it. And I just said, Faith, I will do whatever you need me to do to make this work. And if that means you need to suck another guy's dick, as long as it's a prostitute that we pay for and not just some guy we know, I was willing to do that. Like, I was willing to say, suck another guy's dick if you have to, because we have to even the score, and I cannot lose you. I knew I could not lose you. I knew if I lost you to my mistake and sucking on a hooker's tit, I would regret it for the rest of my life. And I would not be able to live with myself. I could not go on, and I had to figure out a way. I just wasn't going to give up without a fight.
You did. You owned up to it. But on a side note, before I go into my side of this, I think it's funny how, like, you told me, oh, you can suck another man's dick. Like, every girl wants to. It's so hard for us to find a guy to suck dick. It's like, oh, that is not. I do it for you and I love doing it, but that's not what that would not. That would not get you. That's not equal. Yeah, like, it's just not. It's like, I'm doing a job. This guy should be paying me if we're going to hire a prostitute.
All right, that's true.
So anyways, that's a
good point.
That was nice. But I remember walking outside with her dog, and my mom had said something to me that really stuck. She told me, when you're looking at fights and you're looking at arguments, is this worth ending everything you have for? Like, we'll go more into what we have, but I have a kid. He acts as a stepdad. He's fantastic. We have a condo together. We work together. He's amazing in every single way, but he just made that one massive mistake. And I walked around and I thought, I have to forgive him. I have to, because I want our relationship more. I want to be with him. It's going to take time, and I'm still working through it. It's been probably, 3 weeks?
Yeah, it's been a month, but it's still going to be, it doesn't matter how much time goes by. I mean, I can only imagine if the situation were reversed, having that image in one's head. I can only imagine that. It came up again this past weekend, and you were very angry, and, you started kind of coming at me, and I don't know, how did I do? I feel like I tried to stay patient and empathetic to the fact that you were going through it and not judge you. Or did I lash back out at you? And
I actually don't remember cycling through it again.
yeah, you did. Just this like past weekend, a weekend ago.
Oh, but that's on the heels of we went on a business trip and this guy who looks, I mean, 6'2", muscles for days, like was hitting on me on the business trip, and you had snapped at me. So I'm like, whoa, funny, because so that was, I think, why we had that fight. And we'll go into kind of that story. We're going all over the place. Yeah. But what I mostly want to leave you guys with is we are going to talk to you about, we've had some crazy up and downs. So we're going to tell you about a time I went to jail. We're going to tell you about the times that we fought and made up and how successful we've been together. Yeah. And how much we've forgiven each other.
There's, the one meme that you talk about, can you describe that one of the old couple dancing?
I think about this often. You see a lot of memes and you don't know which ones are going to stick, but this one I literally think about often. It's a video of these two old people dancing in the street, and people are filming this. Like, they don't even know they're being filmed. And someone wrote the caption, "Imagine how many times they had to forgive each other."
And that's basically been the case for us. We've both hurt each other. We have both got our own personal issues. We both have been very, very scared of being hurt by the other person. But we've always forgiven each other because up until the Amsterdam thing, neither one of us had ever really crossed the line. We've never
had intercourse with anybody else. I think there's a lot of people out there who are in these relationships, and relationships are hard. They're hard work. It's not all bliss, what you see online, and you know that, but we constantly work on each other and we make each other better people. And we want to just tell you throughout this podcast how to do that, because 2 years in and we're solid.
Yeah, no, we are. And I think what's been really great about you, Faith, is that, and I think you said the same thing about me, because of you, I've chosen to evolve and be a better man, because that's what it's required to be able to be with you and to keep you happy. And in every relationship before you, I never bothered to change. It was just, well, they're not compatible with me, fuck it. But with you, it was like, all right, this is something that I am doing that is bothering her. I need to change this. And it's not like every time I made that decision, I snapped my fingers and I did it. I would say, oh, I'm going to stop checking your phone. And then I would still do it. Like, you don't just snap your fingers and make changes. It doesn't just happen overnight. You have to work at it. You have to continue to try, trial and error. But you've always given me grace. You've always forgiven me. And now, having gotten to a place where I truly do love myself. And it's because I've bothered to take that deep dive. But I've only bothered to take that deep dive because of you. Now, in a perfect world, we would have done this before we met each other. And we would have come to the table.
We broke each other. We broke each other and we rebuilt each other. And to kind of wrap this up, thank you for listening to episode 1 of just this chaotic, fun, blissful, painful bliss in Paris, in Amsterdam, and in London. And we really look forward to sharing more stories of our adventures and how maybe you guys could learn from our mistakes.
Absolutely. Because I think that it's too easy to just give up in relationships. You don't want to stay in an abusive or a toxic relationship, but we were very toxic for each other early on, and we became very good for each other through evolution. And we didn't even incorporate a therapist into this. We talked about it a little bit, but we did this on our own. We genuinely believe that you can learn from our journey. If you're in a relationship or you want to be in a relationship, you have to take care of your own shit. You have to, it's an inside job. You got to work from the inside out. And once we started doing that, that's when we started growing closer.
So to just end this one, our takeaways is, if you're going to add a third person to your relationship, do not let it be a friend. Do not let it be anyone you know. If it is a prostitute, if it's in Amsterdam, wherever you are, make sure you have clear rules and boundaries, and do not smoke, do not drink going into it, because you're just asking for a bad time. And make sure you guys have really talked about this, really discussed it, because if we were to go back, we wouldn't do that again. We would have ended on the sex show.
Yeah, and going home and having amazing sex. And I know there are people who do swinging and stuff like that out there. That's not really our style. If you're more conventional like we are, I would say if you're a guy, don't put your dick in her. Just don't do it, because once you've done that, you cannot undo it. Mm-hmm. And that is, to me, something that should be sacred. Thank God we didn't do that, because your pussy's the only one that I ever want to be in. And at least I have that track record still. I think if you do that, I think you're opening a Pandora's box. And I just don't feel like that's something that could ever be undone. My advice to you is, even the double BJ, I still don't know how you process the double BJ and like you're cool with that. But I definitely know, had my dick gone inside her, we would not be sharing this podcast together right now, or anything for that matter.
Well, that's what it takes to be filthy, fucking, and in love.
Filthy, fucking, and faithful.
Filthy, fucking, and faithful.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.